Hey everyone, it's Rye. We're going to be talking about frigates. Maybe something you guys didn't think about would be next. Maybe if you're going in your head like, ooh, what's the next tree? We're going to be covering frigates. Frigates can come very early. This timing, though, is definitely what you're going to see. Most of the time, it can actually come a lot sooner if you skip workshops and go straight to frigates. Now, that is the most degenerate play you can make, but I've seen it, and I've seen it work one time, but I've seen it fail countless others. So just take that with a grain of salt. I don't think it's a good play, but it is possible. So this early 80s could be faster. I've seen frigates come on like 71 if someone's really rushing it. But for the most part, you are mostly looking at an early 80s to 90s timing. And that means you're going to have finished your universities and you're just going to be teching straight to astronomy, right? Any tree can build this, but typically you're going to have Explo second. And I'll get into why when I show the example game. But I want to make that clear. Typically, it's going to be Explo as your secondary tree. But any primary. Ideally, usually frigates is a tall timing attack, similar to something like Artie, where it's usually a more geared toward tall because they're getting their both their scientist spawns a lot sooner. Frigates is usually you want to have your first scientist spawn to bulb frigates. You don't want to hard tech through astronomy and nav, but that's typically why it's geared towards tall. But any tree can do it. I in the game I'm going to show you. I did it on Liberty, so you can do it on anything. But one thing I would be remiss to not talk about is that frigates are not the only boat in this timing. In fact, the complementary unit, the privateer, is just better than a frigate in almost every way. And once you finish your frigate upgrades, you pretty much have there's no purpose to build frigates anymore. You should just be spamming privateers. I'm going to talk about why that is. I'm going to be talking about but that's kind of the first thing I wanted to say. Frigates are an interesting timing. They require a lot of gold, but they are actually one of the first. They are probably the first timing in the game that I can think of that actually faces strat restrictions, where oftentimes when you're playing coastal, especially tall coastal, you're only going to have one iron node, which means you only get 6 frigates. Now, there's certain ways around this, such as having city-states. You could buy iron off people. Usually the going rate is 3-to-1, so 3 gold, 3 GPT for 1 iron. So if you're looking buy 6, that's 20 GPT or something like that. Usually that's how it goes, but it could be different. So that's something you want to keep in mind. So a lot of times people will be frigating and they'll be like, "Oh shit, I don't have enough iron," and then the attack fails, or they can't do it, or something like that. But oftentimes people very, very commonly buy iron and stuff like that. Okay, cool. So that is kind of something you have to keep in mind. Privateers are the best complementary unit ever. Frigates, again, are an interesting timing attack. It's an attack that is very, very obvious because you need astronomy, and that's Renaissance. It's almost like guilds, except the techs are more expensive and even more out of the way. So, and then the main reason it's pretty hard to do a successful frigate attack is because generally the distance between players when you're frigating is very wide, right? If you're, let's say you're as close as possible, but you're not immediately next to each other. So maybe like there's one person in between you guys, or maybe it's across the ocean and you're each on like, one side of the map. It's usually like 3 or 4 turns to move there. And that's why Explo is a perfect secondary tree, not only because it gives naval bonuses at Explo 3 and the best sim bonuses in the game with treasure fleets and maritime infrastructure. But also because it gives movement to boats, and that can be the difference between getting there a turn sooner and not. And that doesn't seem like a big deal, but that's actually one of the most important things about frigate attacks. That's why Great Lighthouse, is one of the best wonders for boats. Great Lighthouse actually isn't a sim wonder. I kind of think of it similar to building Himeji. It's a very good naval war wonder, but it's not really good for anything else. Obviously, there's some initial benefits. I actually think Great Lighthouse is quite good. But anyway, kind of getting on a tangent here. But frigates, yeah, very good timing. They're terrifying if you're on the coast. Oops, that is the example game. Where is my thing? So let's rank them. And why is this not showing up properly? Here we go. Production quality. It's the name of the game, baby. All right. Cool. So threat level. Now there's some maps that you can't really get frigated on. For instance, if the cap you actually still can die to this like this, but if the cap is, only can get shot by one tile type of thing or something like that, the threat level's pretty low. But it is still a threat. This will always be a threat. I think I'd be lying to you if I put it under a 7 out of 10. I think this is something that you always have to do. Most coastal players, when they join the lobby, will message their other coastal neighbor, because wherever you are on the map, the other coastal is your neighbor. Frigates, it's like a frigate, like no frigate rule or something like that, where you guys are just kind of agreeing, okay, we're not going to frigate each other. Right, so that's the first thing. Detection. This is also something very important. It's actually very easy to detect frigates. I'm going to put this at like a 3 out of 10 because there's some stuff you can do, and I'm actually going to show you in my example footage how you can kind of hide it. But for the most part, it's pretty good. Is it all in? I'm actually going to put this pretty low. I don't think frigates is that all in. And usually it can be, but think about what you're doing. You're going to a tech that gives you seaports and observatories. You are opening a tree that gives you the best sim bonuses in addition to war bonuses. It's really not that expensive from a resources standpoint to attack. Now, it can be detrimental to your game if you go ear warring, but let's say you guys peace out early or something like that. You can definitely sim back. It's possible to come back into the game. So all in, I'm gonna put maybe again, I'll do another 3 out of 10. I think the 3 out of 10 is fair. Is it stoppable? Yes. Frigates are extremely stoppable. I'm gonna say maybe 6 out of 10, maybe 7. Let's do 7. We'll do 7 out of 10. Why is it stoppable? Well, very common ways to stop frigates, and I'm going to show you how Mega would defend frigates, is one, building land units and retaking your cities. Now, obviously, this is not the best way because you are sacrificing your cities, but it will slow them down a lot. And because frigates can't move and shoot, you can essentially, you have to shoot a bunch of times with the frigates. This is why privateers are so good, and we'll get into that in a second. But the point I was trying to make is, if the person builds walls and a castle and Red Fort, you're never taking that city. It's impossible to take that city, pretty much. You'd need to slam so many privateers that it would kill them trying to even take it. And then by the time you ended up taking it, all your units would be blown up. And that's just one city, and then you have to go to the next one. But this is probably one of the most deadly attacks. This can look like chariots if the guy doesn't see it coming. Let's say you upgrade and stuff like that. You make a city, you settle with Explo, you upgrade in his face kind of thing, and then you just go. Then it's pretty much unstoppable in that point. Frigates are a very big combat strength increase, at least from their Galeas counterpart. Galeas is a terrible unit, and frigates actually kind of do damage. But the main reason it's stoppable is because if you're even in tech and you're not being silly, and you don't bulb a scientist, so you don't have to hard tech, you can match the other player's tech, hopefully, and you'll be able to build privateers, which are the best unit in a coastal war, and they're going to have a bunch of frigates and privateers. So your privateers are going to get so much more value. You're going to be able to kill all the frigates that have to stop shooting, and then you can just slam them with flanking. But yeah, is it land dependent? Not really. As we've kind of mentioned, I'm going to put this as a 4 out of 10. I don't think frigates is that. Unlike Galeas is the most land dependent attack in the game. Unlike Galeas, frigates can go through deep water, which is obviously a big buff. But unlike Galeas, or similar to Galeas, they don't have indirect fire, so you can't shoot over hills. So in some cases, if capital could only be shot by 2 tiles, at least by a frigate. And in that case, the only way to take the city is with a bunch of privateers. In which case, you can kind of just slam the city down, and that'd be the best way to move forward. That being said, deep water and ocean is completely open, so it's very easy to get advantages. And if you can swarm your opponent and you can control the water, there's really nothing they can do to stop it except build land units. And then by that point, you're just kind of free slamming in privateers, and you're not really even playing the same game. Now, land units can be pretty annoying, right? If they have a bunch of crossbows with maybe they built a barrack with naval promotions, your frigates are going to take a ton of damage. But in a perfect world, you're just blowing up these cities very quickly. And then difficulty, frigates is one of those like timings that's very first move dependent. It's like Chariot War in that sense. But I'd say simming 2 frigates and executing properly is very difficult. It's very easy to not have enough gold, to not get there fast enough, to get stalled out at frigates because it's very easy to stop, as mentioned here. So the difficulty increases. Not only that, if you're not planning accordingly, it's easy to forget about certain things like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm not getting zocked, and I need to make sure I'm holding these specific tiles, and I'm making sure I'm kind of balancing the idea of shooting units and shooting cities. And at that point, it can get, and not to mention admiral value is very, very important. So I think frigate attacks can be very difficult. There's some incredibly strong players that will style on anyone at frigates because it's a very different ball game. Like, learning to use the land to your advantage, even though that doesn't sound very like intuitive, but learning to use the land to your advantage is huge bonus. So this is going to be my ranking for the frigate attack in general, and I'm going to showcase kind of some of my strategies that I like to do when I'm playing frigates. Okay, so here's a game I played like a couple days ago, actually. I'm playing Liberty here. I'm pretty wide. I have 2 inland cities. I have a good amount of gold, about 900. I have spawned my scientist. Now, here's the important thing. I'm a very big proponent of trying to get my opponent to commit resources to something that I want them to. For instance, I'm planning to attack Megawalk, who's having a very bad game. This was definitely not necessary. Probably could have went here, but I kind of wanted to, go frigates here. I like doing distracting type plays. So for instance, when I'm going frigates, oftentimes I'll go acoustics first. Or in this case, I actually went leaning first. So I have leaning tower, and I'm about to get frigates the next turn. So this is like, to me, the most like, oh, I'm safe type of feeling Mega could have. Mega is very, very proactive. He's got 2 units scouting me, in which case it is very obvious that I'm going to be trying to do this. But, you could build Galeas for a number of reasons if you have downtime and stuff like that. But I'm not showing astronomy yet. And the important thing is, and this is very important, you can't get a tech on a turn, and then You can't get 2 techs on the same turn unless you bulb a scientist. So that's obvious. So you need to bulb 1 scientist. So I'm going to be teching astronomy the following turn, and then I'm going to bulb through astronomy. I'm going to bulb through all of navigation and have frigates the very next turn. In this case, I've pre-built a number of Galeas. I have like a number here. I have 3 here, 1 more coming out. They're all coming in my cities. I don't have that much iron. I have a deal to Bongo, and I'm going to get iron from Cushy here. And that's how I'm going to be able to afford this. The next thing, we can play this here, and I can kind of try to do some explaining. I hope this is muted. It's not. All right. The next thing is I'm going to upgrade my frigates. And I want to, and you might be thinking like, okay, you don't have enough money to upgrade all these Galeas. That's not true, because something you need to think about is one of the beauties of having a unit, and I didn't want to do this to Mega because me and Mega are good friends, but in a normal circumstance, you have a unit around here that's just chilling. That's to scout. And as soon as you hit them with frigates, you're going to go and pillage all of their cargoes. Each cargo is going to yield you 200 gold. That means if I pillage 2 cargoes, I'm getting 400 gold. That pays for 3 frigates instantly. So it's a really good way to kind of just acquire a bunch of money. Frigates is a timing, and I like to describe this when I'm backseating people as they're trying to war, but it's a timing where you need to take it slow. I think the first moves are really important, but after that, you should be taking it slow. You should be responding to your opponent for the most part. It's all about swaps, because the idea is if the guy is shooting with the frigate, that means that frigate is stuck there. So if I swap a unit and he's not able to kill it, I can get a bunch of free shots on a stationary unit that will for sure die. And this is amplified even further when we incorporate privateers. And you'll see in my cities, once I fast forward a bit, and we can look at like some of these turns, but essentially my first move here is going to be to heal promo and then pull it away. I don't have to worry about the Galeas. Bring this guy in, and then I'm just kind of try to answer him. He's going to go for this shot here, so I see that, and then I could just kind of pull it away. So now I know that some of these Galeas are stuck, so I can just freely like move in some of my units and then just like kind of put in work on them. The other thing is, and you can kind of see this too, frigates are doing so much more damage to a Galeas because of just the lower combat strength. So here, I mean, if I could just hurry up. I mean, the thing is, it's like you can kind of take your own time because the resupply of units is so hard and it takes so long. But you can kind of see I just gained 400 gold in that turn from pillaging cargoes. That's what I'm going to use to upgrade this Galeas. And so this is a pretty close timing, I'd say. This is like a 3-turn or 4-turn maybe to get into the war. There's often times where it can be even more than that. So here, I think we can. So see how I'm like answering this? He probably thought I already shot. I can get a heal there. I shouldn't have this in range of the city, but that's a mistake. But and then I can get this in. So I like taking frigate attacks pretty slow. It allows me to kind of think about it. And this is kind of where privateers come in. Privateers have a really cool promo that whenever they kill a unit, they heal 25. So privateers are amazing at finishing units off and then running away because they're going to remain at full health. But privateers are actually how you take cities. So we can look at what happens for Tyre here. I only have 3 frigate shots on the city, right? Including the one touching his capital. So I know that I'm not going to be able to do, and it's a 44 strength city. Like that's just not going to happen, right? But a privateer can just continuously slam, and that's what makes the attack so threatening. So I can move in my frigate here, and I can kind of constantly be cycling privateers. And I have so many more privateers coming, even after like most of the war is kind of done, because remember, there's a really long resupply time. So these were made like 5 turns ago, but they're only just getting there now. And then in this case, I'm actually going to be attacked by Alex here, but the way you take these cities in general is actually with privateers. It's not even with the frigates. So you need to always be making privateers. There are ways that you can build like a single caravel. If you're trying to get a really big jump on someone, maybe like an early 70s, an early 70s frigate timing or something like that. Like you can have like 6 or 7 frigates. The guy doesn't have walls up yet. He's building his workshops. Maybe he went unis first or something like that. And you just get a huge jump on him, then you don't need that many because frigates will blow up cities. But you need specific land for that. You need to have a really fast game, and it's very inherently risky. So I like doing something more standard where I'm going to be going at frigates with my first scientist always. And then I'm going to try to accumulate a lot of gold, upgrade, and then kind of just beat them out in more of attrition. There's a lot of different intricacies to frigate attacks, and frigate war is very, very different than land war because there is no terrain you have to think about as much. The terrain does matter, but not nearly to the extent as land war. So all of that to say, the frigate timing in general can be very, very scary if you execute properly. Now, obviously, it's easier said than done, but I will say I think frigs are very, very threatening as a timing. They are very effective at doing what you want them to do, but it is very difficult. So this is something you definitely want to practice, and it's definitely a timing that is kind of weird. It's in one of those like weird states where it's usually you're there too fast or you're there too slow, and it's hard to get it just right. It's kind of something you just have to kind of get used to doing. But hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you learned something, feel free to give me a like or comment. And then I'll see you in the next one.